Assalamu alaikum and welcome to the Muslim Marriage Podcast, where we talk about healthy relationships from a Muslim lens. I'm Zahra Hassan, and AJ is away this week working on a different project, so it will be just me. But as he would say, we've been married for 3 years now. Alhamdulillah, we just had our anniversary, and let's get started. So, on this week's episode, we're going to be talking about how to choose a spouse. I know on a different podcast episode, we talked about how to find a spouse. This week, we're going to talk about how to choose a spouse. So during the talking stage, when you're meeting people, the question comes up a lot of what questions am I supposed to ask? Like what is it? What do I pay attention to? That will help me decide whether or not this person is the right partner for me. And as always, I find that the best way to answer those questions is by going through a good example, a representation of those questions from the internet. In this case, we'll be going through two questions from the Muslim marriage subreddit. So the first one, a sister is asking, premarital questions, why don't these happen anymore? She says, I am trying to understand why we as Muslims keep falling into the same trap where issues arise after marriage that could have been very, very easily discussed before marriage. My husband and I Googled every single list of premarital questions, some of them up to 100, and literally discussed them all. We've been married for 7 years now, alhamdulillah, with 2 kids, and I am not going to say we never disagree. And we never disagree or argue, but we started on the same page and we are never needing to argue about basics that were discussed pre-marriage. This is an absolute game changer. Yes, after kids, new problems arise. Yes, we both grew as people in the past years. Yes, we even needed to go through marriage counseling due to new communication issues. But even the imam we saw was pretty impressed and happy when he was talking to us, knowing that we did all the important premarital questions, stating only 2% of couples do it. And now having that base helps us know where is the safe spot in our marriage that we want to get back to. That's very important. We're going to come back to that later. Why is this not common sense? And no, my husband and I had a halal love marriage where we met and fell in love, but wanted to make sure what we're doing the 100% the right thing and not just jumping into a marriage that'll end with divorce. And of course, all is then in the hands of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but you gotta tie the camels, my friends. So that was a question from our Muslim marriage. The sister raises a few points, some of which I agree with and some of which I disagree with. In general, it sounds like her approach was she and her husband, when they first met each other, went through a very long list of premarital questions. The fact that they were both willing to do that already is a very, very important indicator of capacity, because many people take this approach where they have a very long list of questions that they would like to go through to make sure to try to control for compatibility as much as possible. But not everybody is going to want to sit down and go through all of that with you. And simply having somebody who is open to going through that process with you is already a very good indicator of not only capacity, but compatibility, that you're on the same page in terms of what it is that you're looking for. So that was probably one of the reasons why this worked so well, tabarakallah. However, the approach of I'm not tabarakallah, it worked very well for this sister, and the process works very well for a lot of people, but it can be time consuming, and unfortunately sometimes it can even filter out some of the people who you could be compatible with, because not everybody is going to want to sit down and go through 100 questions. So if you wanted to pare down that list to a shorter list of maybe 20 questions, you'll still come across many people who will be good matches, who will be compatible with you, and be capable of building a happy, healthy relationship with you, a happy, healthy marriage with you. So the question is, well, what are those 20 questions? In general, the approach that I tell clients to take, rather than downloading a very long list of questions, is to conceptualize what you're looking for by putting it into one of 4 categories. So having this blueprint in your mind of this person that you're looking for, and their characteristics are going to fall into 4 categories, right? So let's go through the 4 categories briefly. I know we've talked about it a lot, but I think it's very important. The first category is compatibility, of course. And when I say compatibility, there is a lot of things that fall underneath that umbrella. Things like financial compatibility, compatibility in terms of need for affection. There is a compatibility in terms of basic logistics. Do they live in the same place that you do? Compatibility in terms of value systems. Are you and him, or are you and her on the same page in terms of moral values, religious values, etc. But under that long list of compatibility, the most important thing that you need to control for is role expectations, right? Role expectations, because most of the people who come, who are coming up on the end of their marriage, or who have just been divorced, prematurely divorced. When I say that, it means within a few years. And there has been a compatibility issue. The most common compatibility issue is in terms of role expectation. So what does this person expect? So when I'm the woman, what does this person expect from me in the household as a wife? And what does he think that I should expect from him as my husband, right? So expectations of role. When it comes to what are the role expectations when it comes to money, when it comes to your relationships with your own family member, like your family of origin, his family of origin, who's going to be cleaning, with the chores? Do they believe that this is woman's work, or do they believe in a partnership? And very important is role expectations when it comes to raising children, right? Is it hands off? Is it hands on? How hands on is it? What does he believe in terms of discipline? Things like that. So role expectations, in terms of compatibility, that's the first one. The second one would be capacity. What is their capacity? Do they have the capacity to be able to build a happy, healthy relationship with you? Not everyone has that capacity at every point in their life, right? Most of us who are not there yet are working towards it. So some things that can affect that capacity would be maybe they have core wounds from their childhood or from a previous marriage that have raised things like trust issues that are hindering their ability to be in a healthy relationship right now. Or maybe there's mental health issues. Maybe they're going through a period of depression, anxiety, that are hindering their ability to be in a healthy relationship, etc. So there's a lot of different things that can hinder that ability. So what is it that, what do we mean by capacity? When it comes to determining the success of a marriage, one of the most important things that will make or break your marriage is whether or not the two of you have in place a healthy conflict resolution routine. So that when conflicts come up, how is it that the two of you communicate through that? Do you have you created a safe space, which the sister talked about in the question, where she said, and having that base helps us know where is the safe spot in our marriage that we want to get back to. So having that safe space where the two of you can sit down and talk through these issues, that's a skill. So whether or not that conflict resolution can happen is depending on your ability to learn that skill, and also the willingness of your partner to engage in that skill. So your partner, you can't change after you're married. So you want to choose somebody who has the capacity or has the willingness and the desire and the ability to communicate through problems with you. Even if they haven't yet developed the skill, you can figure that out later. You can go through a coaching program, see a therapist, but you need somebody who is as committed to the marriage, who is willing to contribute and be open and be vulnerable, do they have the capacity to do that? The third characteristic you're looking for is character. What is this person's character? The easiest way to understand what I mean by that is, if you have a child who is the same gender as your spouse, would you want this child to be exactly like them? Is this person, do they have integrity, right? Do this person, the way that they treat other people, the way that they talk about other people, is it consistent with who they say that they are? If you check their social media, right? If you go and look around on their social media, again, is there a consistency between who they present themselves to be there and who they tell you that they are, etc. We go through in my coaching programs, we go through many different ways where you can sort of observe that. But is just very quickly, that's what I mean by character. And fourth, connection. This is the one that most people are overemphasizing in their search. They're paying attention to mostly connection. Whether or not that there's a spark there, that there is a basic attraction there. Those things are important, but notice that it's only one of four. So it's 25% of the equation. You still need to make sure that there's compatibility, that the person has the capacity to build a healthy relationship, and they have good character. So what do we mean by connection? I know it's very intuitive, but if we were to give an example to sort of solidify a little bit. During the pandemic, so many different spouses had to quarantine. So, and that led to actually the breakdown of many marriages. So is this somebody that you would be able to be locked in a room with for 2 weeks and still be okay? Like, not just be bored, but is this someone that you're comfortable being bored with? Is this someone that you are comfortable being yourself around? Do you feel accepted by this person? Are you able to relate to them? Like, are you able to relate to what it is that they talk about in terms of their childhood, in terms of their interests? Connection. So those are the four general things that you're looking for. The questions that you're going to be asking are going to be falling into those four categories. Most of the connections are going to be regarding compatibility, but you can still ask questions about the person's character in a roundabout way. You can ask questions about their what was the other one? Capacity in a roundabout way. If we talk about capacity, for example, you can just pay attention to how comfortable they are with vulnerability. When you ask them questions, for example, can you tell me about your previous relationships? All right. If they were married, can you tell me a little bit about what happened in your previous marriage and how comfortable they are talking about that? How comfortable they are with being vulnerable in that way. You can ask them questions about their love language. Are they willing to take the quiz with you? What their answers on the quiz don't really matter, but what matters more is this person open to to pursuing things that would be helpful in your relationship, like taking quizzes, right? Do they say yes to that? How do they respond to all of your questions? Are they getting annoyed? Right? This is all under capacity. Is this really annoying? Would they rather not talk about your relationship or not talk about themselves in that way? So if you notice, a lot of the things that I'm telling you to watch out for are not direct. They're not so much direct questions. The questions are maybe helpful, 15, 20, 30%. What's most helpful is paying attention to how a person responds to the questions. Paying attention to, during that time when you're in their talking stage, when you meet their family, how do they treat you when they're around their family? How do they treat you when you are around your family? Just many different scenarios can come up. I remember many times when people go together for the talking stage, they will go and they'll sit down together with their family and have tea and have conversations, or go to a restaurant and have tea and conversations. Those are not 100% helpful. One thing that I did during our talking stage is uh, with my family, my husband would take us out on errands. So we would go run errands, we would go shopping, we would go to the laundromat, and just that problem solving, just daily life gave me a very good window into how it is that he and I can interact in a real way. Of course, my family was there, but in a more real way, if that makes sense. So when it comes to asking questions, when you're in that process of looking for a spouse, definitely ask questions. Ask as many questions as you would like, but try to organize the questions, not so that they're not just random, but that you're paying attention to these four areas, right? So whether it's compatibility, capacity, character, or connection, that you are trying to understand whether or not all four areas are matching up with what it is that you are looking for. And in addition to asking the questions, try to be a little bit more observant of how they're responding to you, how they're showing up for you, with the questions and with your interactions with them. So it's more observation than it is answers to questions that will help you. So if we go to the next question. So this is again coming from the Muslim marriage subreddit. Sister says, I, a 25-year-old female, met a guy who's a 30-year-old male in my city on a Muslim marriage app a couple of months ago. We've met in person a couple of times. His family has come over and we've been invited to their place too. Him and his parents would like to move this forward and take the next steps. They'd like to come over and do a pre-engagement at the end of this month and get us engaged in December when I come home for winter break, In Shaa Allah. We plan on getting married next summer, In Shaa Allah. So far, both of us are pretty similar in that we don't drink, go to bars, clubs, eat halal only, pray frequently, and don't have very close friends of the opposite gender. I made it very clear to him in the beginning that I'm looking for someone who has a proper boundaries around women and doesn't hang out with women one-on-one, since I don't hang out with men either. So today he texted me telling me he is going on a trip to the mountains with his coworkers, which includes both girls and guys. I asked him if his workplace is paying for accommodations and he said no, so they're all getting an Airbnb cabin together and staying in it. If I'm being honest, that makes me so uncomfortable, thinking that the guy I'm going to marry will be staying under the same room for 2 nights with other women too. I did spend almost half of my life back in Pakistan, and I'm thinking maybe I'm too conservative. I am 100% comfortable with him going on a trip with a mixed group. I'm just not really happy with the whole staying in one house situation. And since most of his coworkers are American, I know there will be a fair bit of drinking as well. I just know if I was in his place, I'd get a hotel room or something with my female coworkers and not stay in the same house. I feel like if I speak up or share my thoughts or feelings, that I'd upset him and not want him to move forward with me. So a few things. I think the most important part of that statement is the last part, where the sister feels like this is not something that she can talk about with him without risk of jeopardizing the whole relationship. So this is something that goes back to capacity, right? So intuitively, so always there's the chance that maybe the sister has an issue with confrontation and she's the one who has an issue with communication. Definitely that's a possibility. But what's usually more likely is that intuitively throughout the process, she's understood about what is safe to communicate with him and what is not safe to communicate with him. That might actually lead to jeopardizing the relationship. So there is a issue with capacity right off the bat. I think as most people who are listening have gathered, there's also an issue of compatibility in terms of values in this case. So in terms of her set of values and the ones that she understood him to have when they were first going through the talking stage, is that she doesn't believe in this case, free mixing. She doesn't believe in free mixing in those circumstances where he's under the same roof with female coworkers, plus or minus alcohol. right? So that just goes against her values, and it makes her very uncomfortable, which is valid. Each person has their own different set of comfort. I know if AJ was here, he would tell me, and he'll be the one who's editing this. So I already know, AJ, what you're going to say. You're going to say it's not about comfort, it's about what's in the religion. I agree. But as a coach, and my job is not to I don't pass judgment on people. That's only for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I just work within their capacity. So this is it's that her set of values is incompatible with his set of values. Many people tend to ignore issues like that, especially when they're this far along in the process where they just need to sign on the dotted line. Everything else has been set up. The parents are involved. Everything is just waiting. When people are this far down the engagement process, they tend to overlook big flags like this. Now, ways in which this incompatibility might become a real issue later on in the marriage is innumerable. There might become if the brother and the sister are not seeing eye to eye in terms of what counts as an interaction that they're okay with and comfortable with, that their spouse is having with the opposite gender, that can bleed into not just work, but into social media, into gatherings with other family members, and lead to argument over argument. This is an incompatibility that ends marriages. It ends marriages. So I would absolutely, if this sister was my client, I would tell her, this is what I mean by paying attention to what a person does and being observing, because the brother told her that this is his set of values, but what the brother is doing and how that's playing out in his life is not matching up with what he said. So what a person tells you is maybe 10, 15, 20%, or even 30% of the equation. But what they do is at least 70% of that equation. So paying attention and not ignoring those incompatibilities, not ignoring the red flags that might become real issues in your marriage that will end your marriage early. So this sister, I would tell her, this is too big an incompatibility to ignore. I would walk away. So those are the two questions that we had. As always, if you, inshallah, hopefully I'm hoping this was useful, because it's just me. For at least this week, we agreed that it's probably a better idea to make it shorter, because it's probably hard to listen to me talk for an hour on my own. So inshallah, I'm hoping that this episode was useful. If you found it useful and you haven't subscribed, please subscribe to the channel. It really helps us out. If you have any questions, please comment. And if you would like more information, we post regularly on our Instagram page at Zahra Hassan Coaching. And I think that's it. So Jazaa K'Allah Khayr, and Assalamu Alaikum.